This is why you are getting a band 6.0 or less in writing in IELTS, specifically in IELTS Writing Task 1. I'm Douglas. I'm a long-time IELTS examiner for both the writing and the speaking tests. I also taught IELTS prep classes for 15 years. And I want to help you to get a band 6.5 or above so that you can study abroad or work abroad. The first reason why your writing is getting a low score in Writing Task 1 is because you have not been doing a good job about focusing on the key features of the graph or the chart. In Writing Task 1, you need to only describe the key features. That means you do not include minor details. But what are key features? How do I find them? You're looking for things that are very significant, very important, things that are the highest, things that are the lowest, big changes, or even sometimes where something has not changed, but everything else has. These are a very important thing. You need to find and select only a few of the key features. You need to imagine that the person who is reading your writing cannot see this graph or this chart. You want to describe it so that they can picture it in their mind. You have to write it very clearly, but we do not want to describe every single little detail. They don't need to know that. They just need to imagine the main parts here. All right? That brings me to my second point. Second reason why you're getting a low score on IELTS Writing Task 1 is because you have included your personal opinion. That is something that you should never ever do in Writing Task 1. For any type of graph, chart, process, map, or anything, do not give your opinion. Writing Task 1 is very different than Writing Task 2. In Writing Task 2, generally you are giving your opinion. Sometimes you are arguing why you are right. But in Writing Task 1, this is purely factual. You're only giving the facts. You're only saying what is in that diagram or that graph. You should not be, if it's a graph about coffee sales in a coffee shop, you should not be saying, oh, well, it's great that people prefer coffee A because I also like that coffee. It's the most delicious. No, this is very bad for, this is something that is very bad for your writing in Writing Task 1. Very bad for the task response score. The third reason that you are getting a low score in Writing Task 1 is because you have not included data. If you forget to include data, forget to include the numbers that have been given to you on that graph, that's an automatic band 5 in task response. Automatic. No questions asked. Doesn't matter how well you write in the whole thing. You need to include some of the data in your response. But again, like I mentioned about the key features, do not include everything. You need to choose the most important data to include, all right? Just choose some of the numbers, and then that's automatically, that's helping you out. Because in Writing Task 1, data is kind of like examples in Writing Task 2. Essential, but it's not going to be everything that we write about, right? The next thing that I want to mention about why you are getting band 6.0 or less in Writing Task 1 is because you have forgotten to write an overview. If you forget to write an overview, again, like the data, automatic band 5 in task response. It's a big deal. You need to write a general overview. Usually, I recommend putting it right after the first sentence, the introductory statement, where we are saying what this graph or chart is showing. I would put it as the second sentence. Some people also suggest putting it as a sort of a conclusion. That's okay as well. But you need to put it in there, and it needs to be clear that this is your overview. If you just suddenly insert it in the middle of a paragraph, that's going to be very confusing, all right? Generally, I would recommend just one sentence, maximum two, if it's a very kind of complex, multi chart situation where you have different types of graphs or charts. But generally, I'm just going to keep it as one sentence. Overall, this graph shows that something to that effect. What is the main thing that this graph is showing us? Generally, this would be, if it's a dynamic graph or we're talking about change over time, then this is going to be about the type of change that occurred, like overall, all of these things increased, or they all decreased, or there was different kinds of things going on. Or if it's a static graph where there's no change over time, there's no different time periods, then you're going to talk about the highest thing usually. What was the highest? And possibly also the lowest. Okay? The next thing that people are doing that's giving them a low score in writing task 1 is that their paragraphs are disorganized. Or they have not even had any paragraphs. They just wrote in one big block. Big problem. That's going to affect your cohesion and coherence score. If you have no paragraphing whatsoever, like the other things I've mentioned, these are things that are giving people automatic 5 in that section, which is really impacting their score. You need paragraphs. And to get a high score, above a 6, they need to be carefully organized. Yeah, so you have a sort of an introductory statement, you have a general overview, and then usually you would have 2 smaller paragraphs where you're describing, you're giving the key features and describing the data, talking about the trends if it's a dynamic graph, and comparing and contrasting if it's a dynamic or a static graph. But you need to, each graph's going to be different. You got to figure out a way to put the paragraphs in an organized way. If you're just writing about random pieces here and there, people are going to be confused. So you need to find a way, it could be like the beginning of the graph in one paragraph and the end of the graph in the other paragraph. It could be, company A is you're describing in the first body paragraph, and company B in the second body paragraph, whatever works. Because as I said, every graph chart is so different. It's hard for me to tell you exactly how to do it. And usually for any prompt that you're given, there's multiple ways you could organize it, but it needs to have some kind of organization that makes sense so that when somebody sees what you're writing, and again, you have to imagine they have never seen this graph before. They can't see it. They have to be able to picture it in their mind. So keep it very organized. That will be huge for your cohesion and coherence score, and really also for your task response score, because if you're organized, it makes it your writing much clearer, which can really give a boost for your task response score as well. So those are some of the main reasons why you are getting a band 6.0 or less in IELTS Writing Task 1. These are things that are not that difficult to change and can really, really give you a big boost in your writing. I highly recommend that you make sure every time that you're doing these things. If you have to write out a little checklist before you start writing, then I would do that. Make sure you hit these things. Don't forget the data. Don't forget the overview. Make sure you skip the opinion. If you've included it by accident, then just cross it out. And make sure you have organized paragraphs. And finally, make sure you have a good selection of key features, but not every little thing in the graph. If you need more help with your IELTS, whether it's writing or any part of the test, feel free to put a question in the comments. You can also visit my website, achieveielts.com. You can contact me. I also have some ebooks for sale that could really help you with your IELTS preparation. And don't forget to follow me if you like more tips on getting a band 6.5 or above in IELTS.